Kia ora everybody and welcome back to another episode of Untidy. My name is Matilda Green. I'm a content creator, mum of 3 little people, and I am here with my lovely co-host,
Hannah Davison. Thank you, Maddie. I am a mum of 2. I'm the co-founder and author of the My Big Moments children's books, and I'm sitting here today with my podcast hound, who will hopefully sleep quietly on the bed behind me while we are recording, but we can never be quite sure what her needs are going to be.
Duchess does what Duchess wants to do.
Duchess, she really does. And this is why we called her Duchess, and we should have known that we were just signing up for a lifetime of just tending to the dog and her every whim. Anyway, she's nested, she's quiet, so we'll crack on. Today on the show, we're really honoured to welcome Theophila Pratt. Theo is a cult survivor, an author, and a fierce advocate for freedom and healing. Theo grew up in Gloriavale, a secretive, patriarchal, and highly controlled Christian community on the West Coast, and you might have seen her before in the documentary Escaping Utopia, which was out on TVNZ. At just 18, Theo left Gloriavale with almost nothing at all. She was ostracised by her community. She had to figure out how to survive in a world that she had been misinformed about and taught to fear. Now a qualified occupational therapist, Theo has written a powerful memoir called Unveiled, a story of surviving Gloriavale, where she shares her story not just to heal, but to help others find their way out too, and to lift the veil of secrecy surrounding the cult. She's on a mission to share truth, support people escaping oppressive groups, and to bring hope to those who dare to imagine a different life for themselves. Theo, thank you so much for joining us on Untidy today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Oh, we're so excited. I mean, your book is brilliant, but let's kick it off with a bit about Gloriavale. So Gloriavale and how it's run and the secrecy surrounding what life is really like inside is something that people are very intrigued about. But I'm aware now that your book is out, you're having to talk a lot about the early part of your life, and that includes a great deal of trauma. So how are you coping with the interest and attention that your story is generating?
I think the conversations I've been having have been really great, but even though I've processed a lot of it through writing my book, but you can think you'll process things and then you'll start talking about it again and you can be re-triggered. For me, I still go to therapy every week, and also I live by the beach, so I'm often down there. I think it's just about finding something within your day-to-day life that you can just have your time to process, and that's what I've sort of had to do, which has been tricky with being really busy.
Yeah, it is. It's so hard to balance that, isn't it? So often those things where you actually end up, where you carve out time for yourself or you make space for yourself and what your needs are, they're the ones that can slide first when you're busy with just life going on.
But they're more needed when you're so busy.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, that's amazing that you go to therapy on a weekly basis. Is that something that you knew you needed to do as, at what point after leaving did you come to the point where you're like, therapy actually needs to be part of my life?
It was probably just over a year after leaving Gloriavale, after going to the police about some of the abuse. And then from there, I've been through multiple counsellors because it's very hard to find someone that's not just curious about Gloriavale. But no, I've found an amazing therapist now. And also I go to midi quite often, like most weeks, which is like a Māori massage, which I think has been really empowering as a woman to get back in touch with my own body and feel in control of my body again, that's been a really powerful part of my healing recently. Yeah.
That's really beautiful. And I think you're so right, especially when, if you've experienced abuse or abusive power dynamics and people taking that agency away from your own physical body to be able to come back into that yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah. And also something you said that I want to pick up on is having to go through a lot of different counselors and therapists to find someone that really resonates with you. I think that it's a courageous thing to do, especially when you're feeling vulnerable already, to actually get yourself to therapy. And it can be quite disheartening when you go and then you meet a therapist and you don't gel with them. How did you find the sort of courage and drive to keep trying people until you knew you were clicking with the right one?
you sort of, that part where you have to be like to the therapist that you're seeing at the time, oh, I don't think this is working. I think that's sort of part of the journey of being able to say, no, this doesn't work for me. Because you can so often just keep going thinking, oh no, I have to just keep trying. But I think just trying and going to heaps of different ones till I found the right fit, the more you do it, the easier it is until you find the right one.
That's kind of a beautiful insight to think that as part of the therapy journey, even saying no to a therapist, I want to find a new one, is part of the therapy in a
Yeah.
way, because then if you can get better at understanding your own needs and being like, no, this isn't serving me, I'm going to make a decision to do something else. Therapist doesn't even have to do anything. That's all.
No. Yeah.
That's all part of it.
And I think that's the big thing about healing and trying to go into therapy, is that therapy can be so many things. It's not just sitting on a couch in front of a therapist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that that's a beautiful thing about reclaiming your voice and using your voice in that way. I remember going to therapists and not gelling with them at all. And in fact, I think I was like, I think this is actually like less helpful than not going, than not going
into production.
But like I did not have that conversation where I'm like, this isn't working for me. Like I needed to break up with them. I just didn't rebook, and I found
Just ghosted them.
I just ghosted them.
Yeah.
I did. You mentioned people being curious about, finding out that you were from Gloriavale and what life was like there. And I imagine that you get a lot of similar reactions and initial questions from people when they find that out about you. How do people tend to respond?
More recently, and I think since the documentary Escaping Utopia, people have been more aware and asked really good questions and being quite, I guess, respectful. Whereas before, I found people, when I first would tell people that's where I grew up, especially in Auckland, people just have the most bizarre, I guess, theories of what they think Gloriavale is. And even it's been quite interesting. Often I'll hear people when it comes out in the media, I'll be with a group of people that might not necessarily know that's where I grew up. And you'll hear them chatting about what they think, which is sort of gives you good insight. But I think people genuinely are curious for good reasons. And I think it's a good thing. But people's questions are more just like, how is it still going? How is it still existing? Which is hard because I don't know how it is either. And I just often tell people, like, write to your local MPs, ask them questions, because the government is the people that we need to be asking these questions to.
Yeah. I guess it is tricky with cults. How do you stop a cult? It's like, how do you argue that someone is brainwashed when they're saying that they're consenting to be there? It's very tricky. But what would you like people to keep in mind when they meet someone who has left Gloriavale?
I think just because they've grown up in Gloriavale doesn't mean they're like not smart and not curious. And I think often you can be put in a box and people can think that you're not like very, you don't have questions, or you're not very outgoing, especially as a woman. People can think you're going to be really quiet. And I think that's sort of the opposite for a lot of people. So I think when people meet them, I guess just ask them the normal questions you would ask anyone. But people think they can ask some really personal questions, but you wouldn't ask someone on the street those really personal questions when you first meet them. So I think it's keeping that in mind as well. Yeah.
Yeah, that's so true. I guess remembering that we're all human beings
Yeah.
and no one is just a character in a show. You know what I mean? Like that documentary is a real thing with real people.
Yeah. And illustrating just incredible trauma that people have gone through, and then also the journey and courage that they've had to have to actually leave and start a life on the outside as well. Just sort of, keeping that in mind. And I think natural to be curious, but asking someone to talk about something that holds a lot of trauma for them is a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there was a lot of shocking things reading your book about how the leaders of Gloriavale chose to educate or not educate and organise a community. And there was one thing that you weren't taught, which was the names for the days of the week and the months of the year. And there were, I suppose, a lot of assumptions and expectations I had about, the things that I expected to discover in your book and about Gloriavale. That actually never occurred to me that they would do that. Can you tell us why you think the leaders organised it in this way?
I think it shows like the level of control that they have and had over people's lives. But the days of the week and the months of the year was that they thought that they're named after, like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesdays, named after pagan gods, which they are. And so then they thought that's like heathen. So that's why they changed it to, what is it? First day, second day, third day. But when I left, I didn't know that that's not what everyone on the outside called it. But I think it really shows that that's like the level of control that the Neville Cooper took to control people and, like, I guess to distance them from the outside world so that it's like another barrier to being able to fit in out here. Because if you don't know the simple things like the days of the week and the months of the year, it's another way of isolation.
Yeah. It's astounding.
Crikey.
Were there other things that you'd now consider just basic facts and knowledge that you had to learn for yourself that you weren't taught there?
I think just like all our public holidays, Easter, Halloween, all those things, I didn't know what they were. But I think what would be another thing? I think the whole education system and that women can have a good education is another thing, that our only thing on earth is more than just having millions of babies. I guess sort of blew my mind. Yeah, I think it's just really simple everyday things I guess you wouldn't really think about.
Wow, God, it's just so fascinating. And Theo, you changed your name.
Mm.
Can you tell us a bit about how babies are named at birth in Gloriavale?
Yeah, so every baby, the parents technically choose the name, but it has to have a religious meaning. It has to mean something. And then once you sort of come up with a name, the leaders, you have to go and ask the leaders what they think, and then they say yes or no, pretty much. A lot of the names are like not names, I guess. They're like beloved and submissive. And I find that,
Submissive, was that?
yeah, submissive, beloved, trust, just words that are like good virtues. I don't know about submissive though.
Yeah. Agreed.
Oh, God.
It's things like that, but they don't see that that's weird or like not normal. And I think, yeah, that's sort of the naming process. So I changed my name in Gloriavale when I was, how old would have I been? 16, from Honey to Theophila. And I think that sort of stemmed from me not wanting to, because my name was always sexualized and I was bullied, and lots of men and boys my age would tease me and mock me for that name. In Gloriavale, everything's sexualized. So trying to get away from that, and also the meaning of that, I was supposed to be like this sweet, submissive person, and that just wasn't me. And so changing my name to Theophila. It's a weird way that I found my name. It's not actually in my book, but I found my name from secretly milking cows with my cousins one morning at 3 a.m. And one of the cows' names was Theophila.
I love that.
So that's where it came from. And then, like, yeah, a few months later when I was thinking, oh, I want to change my name, that name just kept coming to me. So, yeah, technically my name came from a cow.
I love that.
I love
that.
it.
I liked that cow. I liked the name. It's got a ring to
Yeah.
it. Beautiful.
But also it was like you found it while you were doing something that you weren't supposed to do, that you chose to do for yourself. And I think
perfect.
it's perfect. Does it have a meaning? Did you look up the meaning?
Yeah, so it means friend of God, loved by God, that sort of meaning. So it had to be religious. I was still mocked by Neville Cooper because of choosing that name, because he reckoned I didn't love God. So he reckoned I didn't live up to my name. But oh well.
Yeah. Who cares what Neville thinks?
Yeah, exactly.
Get out of here, Nev.
Oh, God. And I think with someone like Neville Cooper, and you who were claiming things for yourself, claiming identity for yourself, you're never going to be okay in the eyes of somebody like that anyway, because you are a threat. Yeah.
Yes.
You know, God forbid you lead by example to other people around you, you know?
Yeah.
What can you tell me, what are some of your earliest memories from your childhood?
From young, I remember it's really good memories. We would go to daycare and would go into the bush and play for most of the day and learn to ride bikes and feed the lambs. But I guess reality sort of kicks in when you're about 5, and I guess the pressure of you start wearing a head covering at that age. You start you're rostered on jobs, and I guess all the fun of life sort of disappears. And there's a lot of pressure put on you to toe the line and to be a woman, and that your future is going to be to have kids and marry whoever they choose for you. And so that's when things sort of changed, I think, when at the age of 5.
Yeah, because I mean, there's so much sort of control and suppression and oppression, even for like babies and young children. When you talk about in the book how parents were expected to cover the mouths of their young babies and children if they cried in the
Yes.
communal spaces and stuff like that.
I think children were more a necessity because it's going to grow Gloriavale. So Neville, it wasn't really about that children could be children. They had to be there, but they had to almost not be there. So they had to be quiet and just toe the line and almost not exist. But they served the purpose because they grew Gloriavale.
When you read about that, it's hard to imagine that as young children that there are times and places that you could feel joyful and carefree. Are you saying that like there was that, but then when you get to age 5, that really started to change? Is that your experience?
Yeah, I think so. Obviously, throughout trial, there's the glimpses of good times, and at a drop of a hat, you could have someone being like, are you going to hell?" The fear could just come. They'll be like, might see you laughing with your friends, and an adult might come out and be like, "It's raining today. God could come back. Are you going to heaven or hell?" So it could just switch, and you could be reminded of the fear and
Oh my gosh, it just sounds like they're portraying this idyllic life, but really scratch the surface, and it's just one big melting pot of fear. It's quite shocking. And at what point do you remember feeling in yourself a sense that something wasn't quite right for you in the way that life was unfolding and the way that the community was being organized?
Yeah, so I think when I was about 11, my best friend's family just disappeared overnight. And her mum was Neville Cooper's daughter, and they were quite high up in the hierarchy system of Gloriavale, and then they were gone overnight. And they went from being the best people in the world to they're evil, they're in hell, we're never talking about them again. So that was when I first was like, how does this work? How can people go from being amazing children of God sort of people and then they're evil? And so that always stayed in the back of my mind. Yeah.
Mm. And did you feel, when you felt that shift in yourself, did you feel that other people were feeling the same way as you? And were you even able to have conversations like that with friends or others?
I would have conversations with friends, and then their parents would hear us, and then they would be like, "You can't talk to her anymore because you can't talk about your friend that's not here anymore." And often around those times, we'd have big bonfires out the main part of the buildings where you'd have to burn anything that you had of your friends that had left or anyone that had left. If you had anything, you had to burn it or you had to hide it. From very young, you're learning that you can't fully be yourself. You can't have questions. You have to hide things. Yeah.
Did people from the outside world come in very often?
There would be people around all the time wanting tours of the place. They would have the concerts that were every second year in July. So for 5 weeks of the year, people would come, most days. Yeah, that was sort of the main times. And then the other thing they used to do was have university students from Canterbury. They would come over for like a Saturday and we would put on shows, and it's all to put on a show. It's all what Neville wants them to see. Yeah.
And so would the university students, are they coming over to study you, essentially?
Yeah. Yeah. So
God,
there'll be
fascinating, isn't it?
psychologist students and things like that.
But it's amazing that they would be allowed in, because were the leaders thinking we're showing them how well this community works? Because clearly that's not. Well, I mean, I shouldn't think that that's what the students were doing.
Yeah. I think Neville thought it would be a way to recruit these young people that were at uni. So that was why he thought that that would be a good way of doing it. And I guess these young people were just curious about this way of life.
Wow. Okay. And so talking about Neville, Neville Cooper is the founder of Gloriavale. How would you describe him and how he was as a person?
He was very like charismatic, always happy, walking around saying praise God or Lord's coming back, always sort of happy. But then at the same time, he could flip and just start screaming at someone. You never knew what he was going to be like. When he was around, you tried to act like you weren't there. He would often sit outside the kitchen, and so when girls walked past, he would watch them. So we would always go the long way around or try and be in a group of people and like hide so that he didn't stop us. He would watch you and then a few weeks later come up to you and be like, I saw you doing this and I watched you, and he would use it against you. You just never knew what he was, I guess, up to. In my book, I write about one time when I was younger, maybe like 9 or 10, I was walking along after breakfast and he saw me holding my hand funny, and he just like started screaming at me and was like, you're a retard, what are you doing with your hand? And like always shaming people. That was sort of what he was like. But then he would go back to being like, praise God, to the next person that walked past. And he was always trying to find someone who he could use to then go and spy on other people. So he always had this group of men and sometimes women that were his like little crew that he would get to do the dirty work. Yeah.
Right. It just sounds like you were never able to fully relax.
No, I don't think I ever did. No.
Wow. Do you ever wonder if the leaders of Gloriavale discussed the ways in which they would control and manipulate people? Or do you think they just totally believed what they were saying to people and what they should be fearful of? Like, was it premeditated, or were they just like, we're spreading the truth?
I mean, it started off premeditated, I reckon. But then the more they do it, the more natural it sort of becomes. You don't think twice about what you're really doing. But I think they always have a reason behind what they were doing.
They always had an agenda
Yeah.
for why they were doing those things. And, you were born into this way of life and, these ideas. Why do you think that the brainwashing didn't work on you?
I have a theory that, and it's not true, but I don't know. My theory is
who
that
knows?
yeah, exactly. My theory. So most children are born on the property of Gloriavale, so home births. My theory was that because I was born in hospital, I got to breathe some normal air.
I love it.
So, but I think I just had it in me from a very young age. I think the sense of justice and knowing not right from wrong, but knowing that something isn't right, that gut feeling. Obviously, you don't always know that that's what it is at the time, but I think knowing what I experienced from a young age, the abuse and stuff, that stuck with me. I think that's what made me realize something's not right. And I think it's always there, but you don't in there you push who you are down. I never quite did that, so who I was who I was always.
Yeah.
Sounds like you've got a very strong internal compass.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think that's a lot of it, definitely.
It's such a beautiful demonstration of someone who has a really strong sense of self, that it doesn't matter, what happens externally, that can never be, you know, killed off in somebody. That is in there, and it is going to find a way to succeed no matter what.
Yeah, it really shows that even though people are in controlled environments, there's always that sense of self, and everyone's different and has their own, I guess, ways of viewing their own personality and doesn't get lost. I mean, obviously it's dimmed sometimes, but who you are is always who you are. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And you were born with that.
Yeah.
Breathing free air.
Yes.
I love that. I think that there's got to be some truth in that. That's even coming into this world, you're like, that's not for me. I'm starting on the outside and I'll damn well get back there.
Yeah.
What are some of the ways that the leaders in Gloriavale made sure that people's individual identities were quashed and kept small?
Well, I think it starts from young. Growing up, you're not allowed to have a best friend. You're not allowed to have someone that you're close with, because then you will like talk and create your own ideas. That comes into a lot. Everything's the same, so everyone's got to be equal. No one can be like look different. Everyone has the same shoes, same clothes. Even if you get a present every couple of years, all the 2 year olds get the same gift. So all the girls would get the same doll, all the boys would get the same truck. And if you did have an area that you were more into, they would purposely put you in the opposite sort of place. So if you liked cooking, you would be put on washing. Or if a boy was into farming, they'd put him in the building area. What else? There's always just those sort of things that you can never be different from anyone.
But were there times or places or people where you could truly feel yourself?
I think you have a little group of friends. I had a group of friends and would often meet up in the bush. That was sort of like the safest place. And I think being in nature were the times that I could really be myself. But at the same time, every time you're yourself, you're taking a risk. You're taking the risk that you're probably going to end up in trouble. You could get kicked out. Anything could happen. You bring shame on your family. So that's always something in the back of your head that you're always thinking, this could go wrong.
I'm just thinking about that. And even as you say, you're not allowed a best friend. It's like anything that you enjoy, you have to learn to keep to yourself. You have to learn to keep secret. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. When I was 16, because they don't celebrate birthdays, but me and a group of friends decided we saved up, because everything's rationed in Gloriavale: sugar, cocoa, flour. So we all collected different ingredients to be able to make a cake one night late at night. And a group of us went to like go down and celebrate. But one of my friends, or one of them, decided that they couldn't have that on their conscience because they were going to go to hell because of us doing that. So then they went and told the leaders. So then we all got in trouble. Even though they think it's fun at the time, later on at night they'll be like, we're going to go to hell. I'm going to go to hell tonight. If I die in my sleep, I'm going to go to hell. So that's will take over. Yeah. So that real sense of heaven and hell is huge. Yeah.
Oh, just that fear is so powerful.
That's so sad.
Did you all know when your birthdays were?
I had friends that had no clue. Like, they knew what sort of age they were because we were all in that class, but then they didn't know their exact birthdays, because some parents would be like, no, I'm not telling them. My mum would be like, oh, wait. She would be like, it's your birthday today. But that was sort of as far as they would go. But yeah, some of my friends had no idea what their exact birthday was, even at like 12 years old.
Wow. And did you, I feel like the answer might be yes, but did you always have a rebellious streak? Do you remember what your first act of true rebellion was as a child?
What would have it been? So many things. But I used to like...
What was your favourite? What was your favourite?
I used
rebellious
to
act.
collect all the beetroot juice, like from tinned beetroot, and I would throw it on like our dresses to make them different colour, like a different colour. I remember finding gum and putting it in one of my friends' hair, and then she had to cut her hair, which was like really bad for a girl in Gloriavale. But I think it was just lots of little things. I remember one of the boys saying something horrible to one of the girls in my class, so I told him I was going to get a machete and cut his head off. I think I was like 6 or 7 then, so I definitely boys always got on my nerves. So I think that was where my rebellious streaks came out, was whenever they said something that wasn't nice.
Yeah.
I was
Yeah,
always
You're
really
yeah,
not having it.
yeah.
yeah. I love that deep sense of justice that you have. And I can't imagine that feminism was a word that was used terribly much in the vernacular there. Do you think that you also knew that you were a feminist, that women deserved equality and choices?
Yeah, definitely. Oh, I didn't know that word. It was used in like a bad context, obviously.
Quite close to
Um,
hell, I should think.
yes, especially when Helen Clark was the Prime Minister. That was a big time where Gloriavale could not cope that a woman was in control of our country. I think around that time you realise that, yeah, a woman can be anything. Yeah.
Yeah. That must have
That
gotten
would have
them all
been
going.
triggering for them.
Oh, yeah, did not cope. So
They
there
would
was a
have
lot of
hated it.
coaching sessions around women and not to have a voice and not can't have conversations and like the whole gossiping thing that women couldn't gossip and I don't know, have their own opinions.
Oh, good on you, Helen.
Yeah,
Good on Helen just for pissing them off.
yeah.
Exactly.
It was very confronting reading about how the way girls were groomed in Gloriavale by leaders and, eh, made to be subordinates, essentially sexual slaves and
Mm.
baby factories to their husbands. How did you push back against being forced down that road of a life of subordination?
When I left, there's a commitment document that Gloriavale has. So everyone sort of signs it around the age of 16 to 18. You can't get married unless you sign it. So pushing against not signing that was my way of not being able to get married off. That was sort of my way of controlling that narrative. But yeah, I think pushing back and just it's a hard thing to do in that sort of system. And it was really hard seeing some of my friends get married and then they completely change. But yeah, not signing that commitment document was my way of controlling that part of it.
And in not signing that, is that what triggered the time that you left?
Yes, so it was either sign that document or leave at that point.
And can you tell us a bit about how that went down when you made that decision to leave?
Yeah, so I ended up in a meeting for something, a leaders meeting for something else I had done in regards to someone who had left Gloriavale. Like they reckoned I was sticking up for people who had left Gloriavale. So they put it to me that I had to either sign that document. So it was a Friday and they wanted me to sign it the next Sunday on the Sunday meeting. So I made out that I was going to sign the document and I asked to be put out. So they had these houses off the property where people would get put out when they'd done something bad. So I pretty much just asked if I could go to one of those properties, telling them that I would sign the commitment. And then, of course, I wasn't. And then I went back up on the property without them realizing. And they just like lost the plot. And they were like, "You deceived us. You said you would sign it." And straight away, I was sent to my room and I had to pack my bags. Leaders stood outside my room. And then I had to pack my bags. And then they put me in the van and sent me back to that property. And then, yeah, the next morning I was on the bus.
Wow, it's that quick.
Yeah, they wanted me gone. They were just so angry that I had lied to them about signing the commitment. When you decide you're going to go, they don't want you to be able to say, goodbye to any of your friends or tell them the real reason why you're leaving, because then they can like tell people that I left for whatever reason they want me to be left for.
It's just another way they can control it.
Yeah, definitely. So it was like, it's very quick once you say you're not. And some people it's not quick. Often people can be in meetings for hours and the leaders can convince them that time that they'll stay for a bit longer. But I think they just wanted me gone.
I suppose they knew enough about you then that they probably were waiting for a
Yes.
time when you did enough to actually be sent out and be made to leave. So I know in the book you said that you were dropped off at the bus stop with one suitcase and I think, what did they give you, $200 or something?
Yeah.
And you'd never caught a bus before, never been, caught a plane before.
Never used cash?
No, never. I think the most cash I'd ever seen was a $5 note.
Wow.
And I didn't know what an EFTPOS card was to know that there was something else other than cash. Yeah, so it was a complete learning curve from the beginning. The bus drive, I just got on the bus. They had booked me the flights from Christchurch to Auckland, but I had no idea how to catch a plane, where to go in the airport, but somehow I got through that day. Yeah.
It's incredible. What was the goodbye like? Because you got dropped off by your mum and brother, I think, is that right?
Yes. So my brother pretty much was just, my kids will never hear your name again. And then, yeah, my mum sort of gave me a hug, but her sort of words that really stayed with me was like, your decision you made today is damning your soul to hell. And so then that was sort of it. And I think in some ways she said that more to protect her own conscience. So then in front of my brother, she's seen to be like forsaking me and like hating me, even though she might not have truly felt that. But that was what she had to do so that when she went back into Gloriavale, she could be like, I've disowned my daughter.
Yeah, she's done her part, sort of
Yes.
thing. It's
Yeah.
kind of, it's doing that through a hug. It's so sad, isn't it? That she would have felt sadness in her
Yeah.
heart, but she has to go through these words. It's just, it's terrible.
It's really unimaginable as a mother. Do you have a relationship with her now?
Yeah, but more so recently, I think with all the court cases and the police being more involved, that's opened up our relationship. And so she has a phone now in Gloriavale, but that came about from like my younger sister left 3 years ago. But that came about because my sister sadly tried to commit suicide in Gloriavale. And so the police were involved. And so now my mum's got a phone. My sister's doing really well now. She's studying. But from that situation, my mum's been able to keep a cell phone, which has opened up, I guess, us being able to communicate more regularly. And recently, I think it was last year, a cell phone tower got put up. So before that, you couldn't get cell phone coverage in Gloriavale. So getting that tower's made a huge difference, and which means that we can drop phones off to young people in there because there's cell phone coverage, which is good.
Oh, the leaders must hate that because, now people have access, to the outside world, access to support, more information.
Yeah.
A lot harder to control.
Yeah. Wow. You had incredible support from family friends to help you integrate and start your life in the outside world once you got to Auckland. What were some of the defining moments as you started that new life on the outside that gave you, your first real taste of freedom and individuality?
Yeah, I think shopping and buying my first pair of jeans and things like that was probably the first sort of thing that I guess made me feel like an individual and like my own person. But learning to drive was a big thing because women in Gloriavale don't learn to drive. So that was a really cool first thing. But then, yeah, going to university was the other really big thing that I didn't know was even a thing. and was possible. So being able to do that really, I guess, opened up my world, and I learned so much, not just in my degree, but just learning from other 18-year-olds and like other young people and being with them, I guess, helped me navigate the outside world, because as young people, they're all navigating it too. So I think being at university helped that process be a lot smoother in a way.
And that's such an achievement, because were you the first person from Gloriavale to get a degree?
Yes, it's in Gloriavale, some women do diplomas in early childcare, but leaving, there wasn't a lot of women that have gone and actually finished a degree. So I think doing that was, a big, hopefully an inspiration to other young people, not just girls, but also the boys, that they could do more than just farming. Going and getting a degree is something you can do and achieve. Yeah.
It's a huge achievement. And I think as well, like, what it could be an incredibly daunting thought for people who are in there who, like, it's not just doing the degree and getting that education, it's you have to learn how the entire world works on the outside, and that must just seem like such a daunting prospect to go, yeah, one, you've got to learn how the world works, and
Yes.
then you're gonna go and educate yourself and get a degree. It's huge, but you've done it.
Yes.
And
I've done
what
it.
an incredible thing to be able to show to people as an example of what's possible.
Yeah, and I think being real and knowing my degree wasn't easy. I failed assignments, I redid them, but I had to just keep going because that was my dream and that was what I wanted to achieve. So I think people, I'm saying this for young people that are leaving Gloriavale, it's not like this perfect world out here. You have to work hard. You might fail, but you have to get back up again and keep working towards your dream. And university might not be your goal, but it's not like this perfect world when you leave Gloriavale. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, your perseverance is incredible. I think one thing, like reading about just what you guys had to do in your day in terms of labor, I would say that anyone who has actually managed to do that, like hardly any sleep, getting up at 3 or 4 in the morning or something wild, doing a full day's work, doing the education, doing, then getting to bed late after a massive day, you do have the skills to persevere. And, knowing that you've got that will get you through.
Yeah, definitely. You've got to pull on that resilience and that you've survived Gloriavale so you can survive out here. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
Totally. And after reading your book, it's evident that leaving Gloryvale can cause quite a rift in families. And I'm sure
Mm.
you've probably had to make peace with letting go of some family relationships. But have any of your relationships that were tested by your leaving been renewed or healed?
I think the biggest relationships that have healed have been with my two sisters that have now left. I think that's been really good reconnecting with them. And in Gloriavale, we didn't really share our stories and our experiences because we were too scared that one of us are going to tell on each other. So I think being able to now be in a safe environment and actually share what we felt and like what we went through has helped our relationship a lot. So yeah, I think it's been good in that way. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. And you talk about sort of never being able to relax, and basically you're in a state of survival mode constantly in Gloriavale. We've talked a wee bit about, how you have been unpacking that and what you do
Mm.
for yourself to do that. In terms of like some of the really big feelings that have come to the surface that you've had to grapple with, what have they been?
I think the biggest thing is I think anger is going to be probably the strongest emotion for me, but it's more, I guess, that people in Gloriavale don't realise that how they're living isn't normal. And I think now that I've been out for so long, you can sort of forget that. But I guess it's how they're still living and how children are being treated is the hardest sort of thing to fathom, and that it's still continuing. But yeah, it's tricky to sort of process that, and I think writing my book and putting that into words was a good way to process emotions. But yeah, I think being in Auckland and separating myself from that environment has helped me, I guess, heal and just figure things out from a distance. Yeah.
Yeah. And I understand that you're in a loving partnership now, which is wonderful. But was it difficult to get to a place where you felt you could trust and get close to a man after encountering the men in Gloriavale who so greatly abused the power dynamic that they had there?
Yeah, it was hard for me to see that men could be anything but how they were in Gloriavale. And I guess, I mean, obviously, meet my partner Kevin, and he's amazing. But at the start of our relationship, I constantly was saying sorry. I was always thinking that he was like, it was always on edge that something was going to happen. But when it didn't, I was like, it's all going to go wrong eventually. So I was always apologizing, thought that he was like watching everything I did and he was going to snap. But I think as I realized that that wasn't happening, I realized how I had seen relationships in Gloriavale wasn't normal, and that I think a big thing in our relationship is that we're equal and we're partners. And in Gloriavale, that word partner in a relationship is like the worst thing ever. So men are always the head of the family, and I think realizing that I'm an equal part in our relationship is been probably the biggest thing that I've learned, and how amazing that is. Yeah.
Well, I think a lot of people will actually be able to relate to that because if you haven't seen a
Mm.
healthy relationship, I mean, how are you supposed to know how they work? How are you supposed to go into the world and then meet someone and all of a sudden have this great fulfilling relationship where you're both seen and heard when you've never seen that before? I mean, it's such a learning curve for so many people who grew up in some sort of dysfunction to have
Yeah.
to learn that from, square one.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think obviously not everyone's relationship goes smoothly. In any world, relationships can be up and down. But I think I've had a good experience, but other females that leave Gloriavale do end up in abusive relationships, very abusive relationships. And I think still highlighting that it can be a really big hurdle for especially females trying to navigate where they fit in, and how men treat you. They shouldn't be treating you that way, but it's so normalized in our world that they accept it, that they accept that that's their worth. But yeah, I think, and that is a really big journey for a lot of female that leave Gloriavale.
Mm.
As far as your relationship with religion and spirituality now, is that a part of you that you identify with, and what sort of role does it play in your life?
Yeah, I don't believe in organized religion. Like, I believe in spirituality, and I believe that I can get that from connecting with nature or just doing my own meditation or whatever it is. Yeah, I don't believe in sort of any organized religion. Yeah.
Mm.
It's not a big part of my life, and I guess I've tried to go to churches, but they're just not a safe place for me. And I just don't believe in putting myself through that if it's not suitable for me. And I
That's
think
that's
that's okay.
that's totally fair enough. I mean,
Yeah.
religion is, you want to enjoy it and feel safe and feel like it's connecting with you, and it sounds like you have
Exactly.
found a way to access
Mm,
that within yourself, and that's the most important thing. But we
yeah.
saw in the Escaping Utopia documentary, and also reading your book, about your visit to India where you were reunited with your sister Precious, and she was sent over to
Mm,
get married and establish a Gloriavale community over there, and it's
mm.
your mission to try to bring her and your nieces and nephews home. Where are you now on that mission? And is there hope for being able to get them out of India?
I think there is hope for them being able to get out of India. It's going to be a long process. The living conditions over there have definitely gotten worse. And like, she's just had her seventh child. Working with Deborah Manning, a human rights lawyer, has been a great help in terms of knowing that there is hope. But it is a very long process, and there is a court case. Well, there's a case that the police are taking quite seriously. They've started in Wellington, and I guess they're still gathering evidence. And I think us going to India has definitely helped that process because we were able to gather, I guess, information. But in order to affect India, the community in India, we have to make change to the New Zealand one. So I guess it can seem like we're not doing much about the India stuff, but yeah, I guess I've realised that through focusing on the New Zealand community, Gloriavale, that will impact on the community in India, which will hopefully mean that those women can be brought back to New Zealand.
And are the main barriers, is it just because what they are doing is consensual, and so is that the main barrier that is
I think
stopping
the
it?
main barriers that they've had to take into consideration the psychological abuse, and that even though these women might say that they want to be there, they're saying it because that's what they've been told to say, and that's what the brainwashing throughout these years. And if they say otherwise, it means they're damning their soul to hell, they're damning their kids' soul to hell. And so you have to sort of break that apart and look at it from that way. And it might not be obvious. It's not these women wanting help, screaming for help sort of thing, but it's breaking down and actually realizing it's psychological abuse as well as physical. Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
When people want to leave Gloriavale here, how do they find support to do that?
Well, I think more recently, with lots of people leaving, they connect with family that have already left or friends. But there's the Leavers Trust, which does help people now. It wasn't around when I left, but they do provide like different support. So helping people navigate finding work and housing and things like that's a big part of that journey. So yeah, the Leavers Trust is a big part of supporting people leaving. And there's a lot of other work being done on the West Coast around getting housing for younger people that are leaving, because we're seeing like a lot of 15-year-olds leaving and they don't have the support of their family, and then they get out here and go wild. And yeah, so it's helping that younger generation as well is a big part more recently.
Yeah, God, because they're so vulnerable. They're really so vulnerable. Are you close to some of the people that have left? I imagine that, you'll share a bond that few others can understand. But is it also a painful reminder of what you all had to endure as well? What are those relationships like?
Yeah, I have some really close friends. You have seen Rosanna on the documentary and Pearl, and there's a few of us we all do stay in touch quite regularly. And yeah, we have a great bond, but you also realize, like through conversation, like we all sort of went through similar things, but at the time you thought it was only you that thought that. Or like a big thing that we often have conversations about, a lot of us have really bad nightmares, and I think being able to talk about that now, and even in Gloriavale we had really bad nightmares about going to hell and that whole sort of fear-based stuff. And I think now being able to talk about that since leaving's helped a lot of us realize we're not alone. Yeah, that's sort of helping each other on our healing journey, but also realizing that, and through the journey we all get to different stages differently. So it's been really good staying in contact with people.
There is so much power in just sharing, isn't there?
Yeah.
Like when you realize that it's not just me, I have people that I can talk to that understand, and it makes such a difference. But
Yeah.
what about people on the outside? Because after this podcast, I'm sure, and there will be so many listeners that think, how can I help? What can I do? Now, is there a way that people on the outside can assist in supporting those brave enough to leave and start a new life, or assisting in the efforts to bring your sister Precious and her kids home to New Zealand. How can people get involved?
I think people can get involved by writing to their local MP and asking questions, and that way, I think doing that can really help people feel like they are doing something.
Mhm.
The other thing, if you can help financially, is that on the Leavers Trust website, you can buy packages that it's a different thing. There'll be like purchase essential kit or like self care sort of stuff for families when they first leave. So like they're bunched into like different categories, and you can purchase those things that will then go towards purchasing things that people need when they first leave, which is a good way to be able to help. And if you're in the South Island, if you have a bed or couches and things, reaching out to the Leavers Trust and to see if people need that's always a good way of helping as well.
Great.
Yeah, that's awesome. And we'll put links in the show notes. So if anyone is able to assist and support in any way, we can hopefully make that straightforward for you. In terms of the future of Gloriavale itself, what would you like to see happen?
I think getting young people into normal education, schooling on the outside is going to be a big part of that. But I think eventually it's going to shut down, but I think it's going to get worse before it gets better. But hopefully, in some time, it will just naturally disintegrate. But how that looks is we don't know. But I think the government realizing that they're going to have to really support people and that it's not just going to be an easy thing. Like if they shut the place down, there's going to have to be housing for all these people, and how that works is going to be tricky. But hopefully, people being able to get to the outside world and have the same rights as any other New Zealander and know that how they're living now doesn't, like, their rights aren't being met. Yeah.
Yep, totally.
So you've come out and you've got your university degree. You now work as an occupational therapist. Do you think that what you've experienced in your early life has helped you in the work that you do now?
Definitely. I think it impacts a lot. So I work with young people. So I work with 12 to 24-year-olds with medical conditions and helping them back into education and back into being able to do the things they want to do. So I think having my, life experience, helps me be able to connect with a lot of these young people, especially like in South Auckland where I work. And I think that empathy and helping young people realize that they have so much to offer the world is a big part of, I think, what I bring to the role I work in.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And it must be such an inspiration for them to, be working with someone who's been through enormous challenges and obstacles in early life, and then you've gone on to do everything that you've been able to do. Obviously, no one should ever be defined by where they started in life, and having grown up in a cult as you did, and you're now using your voice very bravely to speak up for those who are living in oppression. What words would you like to give to those people who are in a place where they need hope and they're trying to find their way to claiming their own freedom?
Yeah, I think what I would say to anyone that's in like a controlled environment, whether it's a relationship, a cult, anything, is that your voice always matters. Trust your gut. What you feel within yourself is true, and always trust yourself and go with that, and that you can get out of that situation. But yeah, always trust your gut, and your voice deserves to be heard no matter what. Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah, that's
Yes.
beautiful. Well, it's a wonderful place to finish. And I just want to thank you so much for your time and being able to talk about this and share this with us. And I hope that, there are people who will listen to this and it does give them hope and it does inspire them with courage that there is a life that they can make on the outside of, whatever they're experiencing. And just a massive congratulations on your book. It is an incredible read. You've done a beautiful, beautiful job, and I hope that people will read it and yeah, just I hope that goes gangbusters because it certainly deserves to, and we just want to wish you every success with it.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Everyone who is listening, I hope that you will have a look at, if you're interested in how you can support people who are leaving Gloriavale. And yeah, thanks for joining us, and we will see you next week. Take care out there. Mā te wā.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Untidy. If you enjoyed it, we'd love your support to keep making the show. The best thing you can do to help is subscribe by hitting follow in your podcast app and leaving us a little 5-star review. You can also now watch and subscribe on YouTube and check out how these millennials are keeping up with the cool kids on TikTok and the gram. Lastly, please share this podcast with your mates. It means that we can keep building this supportive community, keep giving you untidy episodes, and just keep doing what we love to do.
Don't forget to check out mybigmoments.com for kids' books that make your tricky job of parenting a whole lot easier. Untidy listeners get a discount at checkout, so just pop in Untidy for 10% off your order. Lastly, we would like to thank all of the good people who make this podcast possible. Flicker Williams and Joe Rocker at My Big Moments for the beautiful artwork and design, Maxine London Creative for editing this episode, and Lana Byrne for creating our social content. And to you, our listeners, Araha nui, take care. We'll see you soon.